All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another HSS Live. Today we're going to be going over some automation. This is a question I get all the time. And rather than just make a static tutorial on this, I thought I really love these live streams. I love the aspect of you guys being able to ask questions while I'm doing things. And so I thought, hey, let's just go ahead and make this a live stream, sort of hands-on kind of training slash guiding, guided tour, I guess. I don't know. Um, yeah, so shout out to the comment section. You guys are already rocking it. Thank you guys so much for showing up. And there's a lot of different countries that's represented here, which is super cool. Some of you are actually tuned on pretty late. I know Keith is here. He says it's 11 where he's at. Someone else said it was like midnight. I'm trying to scroll back up and see. Anyway, that definitely shows that you guys have got some dedication here. And hopefully I can deliver on some good tips and tricks for you today to help you get started. Craig, good to have you, buddy. If you're completely new to Cakewalk by BandLab, this is definitely the place you want to be. So, by the way, although this is about automation, Craig, if you have any kind of questions whatsoever, feel free to ask those about anything regarding Cakewalk too. I don't want to completely leave everyone out, but you'll also find too that in the chat section, there's going to be a ton of people that are going to be super cool and will help you as well. It's 10 a.m. where he's at. Cool. All right. So if this is your first time here, which I see a lot of reoccurring visitors, but I see some names that I haven't seen before. So I just want to introduce you. I'm Robert McClellan, and this channel exists to simplify the complexities of the home studio and to help you make professional sounding music in a less than professional space. Now, just as we talked about in the recent interview with Warren Hewart, this entire channel is built around, if you want to call it a quote unquote business model, which I'm not really seeing this as a business, but if I had to attach a business model to this channel, it would be that this is a community-based business in the sense that we get, Mark George says, sound advice Sunday. Yeah, it's changed, hasn't it? But essentially we get together, we bounce ideas off of each other. Hey, Tone Mangler, we talk to one another. We help out one another. We suggest tutorials. I bring on people here on the channel that will help in areas where maybe I feel that I'm lacking, or maybe they can just bring some tremendous value to the channel. So yeah, welcome. But the motto around here is we can dream alone and we can create alone, but together we can achieve so much more. So once again, if this is your first time being here, so appreciative to have you. And if you're a frequent, guess what I just did? I just hit that button there we go. Anyway, if you're here frequently, thank you guys so much for showing up and for just being sort of a rock in this ever-changing, unstable world. Now, as usual, I want to give some shout outs to the chart toppers. We have a few extra to add to the list today. And unfortunately, there are some here that I was not able to update that just gave in this particular chat, which was super cool. So thank you, Mark Birchsteller, for that $20 super chat right off the top. Hadn't even started the stream yet. I looked on the screen and I was like, wow. So I hope I can provide some value that will help to accommodate that. So we got James Sheets here, who's at the top of the list. James is an avid supporter, both on the streams and off the streams. He has helped in many ways behind the scenes as well, and his mixing skills are getting really up there on par with everyone who, of course, he's had some, hey, there he is. Nice. James is in the house. Nice to have you, James. Anyway, all of these individuals are awesome in my book, not just because they have donated in some way, shape, or form, but because they see some value in this. And in doing so, these are individuals that, because of their giving, because of their generosity, it makes it so much more easier for me to sort of get that fuel the fire and get the fire in the belly and say, okay, I got to keep creating, I got to keep making. And, for years I have done this without any kind of feedback whatsoever, was just putting videos out. And just on a whim, I thought, well, I'm going to go live. And that's where I think it's really at for this channel. I think that's where this channel has really shined in the last year. So thank each and every one of you. You guys are just amazing. I cannot tell you how much. I was almost in tears the other day when I got off the stream with Warren, because we were talking off camera, and he said some things to me that just really touched my heart. And one of the things that he said, I'm kind of getting emotional even now thinking about this, is he said, Robert, I have seen a lot of people doing what you're doing, but I have never seen a community like you're creating, other than that of they produce like a pro community. He said, you're doing an awesome job. You got some great people that's helping to support you. So never lose sight of that. And that really just touched me, because he knows what he's talking about. He's built an awesome online community. So, all right. Anyway, I don't want to get too sentimental on you here. At any rate, if you also have any questions that you want to guarantee that they will get answered, the super chat option is always available for any dollar amount. If you drop a 99 cent to $1 super chat, it's going to guarantee that your question will get answered. And also, if you're already here, make sure you hit the like button on this video. I'm told that that's really good for the algorithm, which helps to push these kind of videos to other people who need the help as well. And so, sort of real quickly, before we even get into any of this, I got a little bit of a surprise here, because we're actually having some giveaways picked live on the show. I've never done this before either. So during the GearFest 2020, I kept noticing in the comment section that all the stuff that they were giving away during the GearFest, which is if you're not familiar with it, it's kind of like a close to home NAMM. And basically they have all kinds of vendors and professionals, audio community professionals. If you haven't watched the GearFest 2020 stream, which I did on here, where I did kind of like a watch together, you can either check it out here or go to the Sweetwater channel and check it out. Really good time though. But during that stream, I noticed that they were giving away things only to people in the States. So I wanted to accommodate those who are watching who are nationwide, because there's a lot of people even on this stream right now that are not from the United States. So I had a drawing that would be going on for the sake of those who are on GearFest but weren't able to win GearFest prizes. So I'm going to be drawing 5 winners from that right now, so that you guys can kind of check that. Awesome, Craig. If you have a channel, man, yeah, anybody who's got a channel in the chat, support one another. Find one another, subscribe to each other's channel. That's where it's at, man. We got to build this community. So real quickly, before we get into the meat of today, I wanted to go ahead and draw these winners so you guys can see kind of how it's done on the back end. So if you ever were to enter a drawing, and some of you already have, you can actually, thank you, James, for that super chat. You're awesome. So if you ever entered a drawing and you're wondering, how does he pick the winners? Now I want to show you exactly how I do that. So this is an app that I use for the computer called Gleam.io. I love using this because it randomly selects winners. I don't have to go in and pick them. And then that way, there's not individuals like, oh, he's always picking the same people. But I wanted to show you sort of on the back end how it's done, so that you can see, that this is totally like my hands are tied when it comes to the winners. Now there are ways, like I'll show you here in just a second. So let's go ahead and draw these winners. Okay, I'm gonna select 5, and these winners are actually gonna win courses that I'm giving away. Okay, so then right here it will show you. I'll try to hide that email address here. I don't think it's gonna let me. Okay. All right, so these are the winners. And then now that I have these picked, what I'll do is I'll email these individuals and I'll tell them that they won. It looks like this individual won Compression Simplified. This individual won Compression Simplified as well. And then these last 3 won the Creating a Song Step-by-Step video series. And so the only stipulation on this was they had to be subscribers to the channel. So I'll make sure that they are, and then we'll go from there. And so that's how the winners are picked. If you ever enter a drawing and you're wondering, how does he pick the winners? That's how I pick the winners. That way my hands are completely tied and it's a really fair process. Along those same lines, we are having a HSS song contest. So the deadline will be July 15th. You can enter your MP3 version of a song. I've already got some great submissions. Some of those are actually here in the chat. So Mark George has a really cool song that he submitted called Planets 2. I'm really, really excited for you guys to be able to hear that. It's stellar. I listened to it in the car. I probably listened to it 3 or 4 times now just because it's like one of those driving songs. You'll have to check it out. But yeah, each and every one of these submissions that have been submitted already, there's 5 of them, I believe, are really cool. So we got another wide variety of submissions. So if you want to submit a song of your own, just go ahead and submit it in MP3 version. There will be a link in the description of this video for you to submit that song there. And then the only other stipulation is make sure that the song is clean, as this channel is a clean channel. I would like people to be able to watch this channel with their kids running around in the background and not have to worry about hearing things or seeing things that they don't need to. And then also make sure that it has absolutely no copyright attached to it whatsoever. The last song submission contest for the quarantined song challenge we had, about 3 or 4 of them were copyright. Well, no, yes, three of them were copyrighted in some way, shape, or form. And every time I would hold them on my stream and we would begin to give like live mixed critiques or feedback or anything like that, I would get dinged and they would say, hey, you've got copyrighted material. And then I would have to actually delete that section out of the video. So I don't want to have to do that. I want to be able to actually go in there and play the whole thing. It didn't demonetize my video, so that's cool. Even if it does, that's not what it's about. But the good thing is that most of the people were very cool about, okay, yeah, you're right. It was already previously released. And so there you go. All right. So looks like we do have one question automatically here from James Sheet. So we're going to hop over to the desktop now. We're going to get into sort of the meat of this, if you want to call it that. And James has already asked a question through the super chat. So we're going to see here. Got my autosave feature on. If you don't know about autosave, it will save your life. I'm going to hit I to hide the inspector panel, hit B to hide the browser panel. So that'll give us more screen real estate here. And then James' question says, I know you don't enjoy riding the waves. I can barely read it because it's on the screen. Here we go. I know you don't enjoy riding the waves, but with that in mind, do you ever use vocal or bass writer fire automation? Oh, okay. I know what you mean now. Yeah, I don't, if any of you have been here before, you know that I'm not a huge fan of Waves plugins just simply because of their customer service is not the greatest. Now, if they improve their customer service, I got no problem plugging them again, but right now they're not okay in my book. But anyway, so as far as vocal writer or bass writer, I do not own either one. There's actually an alternative plugin that I use for vocals that sort of does the same thing that's free. I'll show you guys that here today. If you're interested, go ahead and drop a chat if you are. But with that being said, I wouldn't necessarily say that they're bad to use. I would just say, like with any other plugin, you definitely want to make sure that you're using them sparingly. So the pros of those, because that's kind of a 2-part question. The pros of using those is the fact that you don't have to, excuse me, that you don't have to do all the crazy automation like we have right here, which this isn't really crazy automation, but you don't have to do this kind of stuff. And one of the things about the vocal writer and the bass writer that I've seen is that they're pretty seamless in the sense that they work sort of just in the background. They do what they're supposed to do. So those are definitely some pros. But then the cons on that side is if you get too used to relying on tools, sometimes it actually takes away that humanistic aspect where, a plugin is going to think it knows where things need to stay, but plugins aren't always completely like 100% accurate. So case in point is with the latency from plugin to plugin. One plugin will have, a 1 point, maybe like a 1 millisecond or 3 millisecond latency, whereas another plugin will have a 2 millisecond latency. So from plugin to plugin, it might be different. So the cons of that would be that you're relying on a machine other than, human hands to do things. And as we're going to see here today, you're kind of at the mercy of the DAW too. So I don't want to throw a cog in the wheel of those who might be thinking about purchasing those plugins. If that's in fact what you want, then great. But Craig, he says, sorry, he's got to leave. He's got an appointment. Be sure that I'll be back. Okay, cool. Well, it was good having you, Craig. This can always be watched again if you're busy, you got stuff to do. That's totally understandable. Today's kind of a late stream anyway. So, and that's due in part to my new third shift. Yay. I'll try to pick a time though that's better for everybody all the way around. And the more that people that comment in the chat, what time it is, where they're at, that's going to help me to understand going forward what would be a good time. And if I have to adjust my schedule, then I'll do so to make it easier on you guys. Okay, so before us here on the screen, which James, I hope I answered your question, and I will definitely get to that plugin here in a minute, Jurgen, about the automation. So I hope that answered your question, James. So here on the screen, what you're looking at right now, this is an automation lane or an automation. It's sort of like a take lane if you're used to using Cakewalk for vocal composition, where you lay down many different vocal tracks, and then you kind of like pick the best from each of those vocal tracks. That would be considered a vocal comp. Now in Cakewalk by BandLab, it actually has different lanes within the same track, which make it kind of easier. You can fold them down. It doesn't like take up a lot of real estate on your screen. The same thing with automation. So what you're looking at right now is an automation take lane, and that can be brought up or folded down here by ticking this little button right here. So if I was to, let me make sure that my, mug is not in the way here. Let me remove myself from the desktop just to be sure that you guys can see this. Okay. So anyway, if I was to click on this button right here, and this is just for those newer users who are on the stream right now, this would actually open up this take lane here. And well, I'm calling it a take lane. It's actually an automation lane. These are the take lanes. And then this is the automation lanes. So essentially it's just like extra tracks that are folded underneath the tracks that help to, sort of keep things on the up and up. So as you can see, this does actually have something on the lane, which means that there is an automation, some sort of automation that's going on here. Now, real quickly too, for those of you who are first-time users, in order for automation to actually be utilized, you have to make sure that this little R is ticked to where it's glowing like it is now. It's a lighter color. That means that it's going to be red. And what that means is that as the song is playing, the DAW itself is going to be reading the changes that are taking place in this automation lane. So if this was off, then that automation lane would be pretty much null and void. It would not even be used. However, with this being on, now you see that the R in the automation lane is on as well. And that says automation read, which means it's going to read that automation. So for those of you who are maybe newer to this and you're wondering what is automation, automation is basically a way of telling your DAW to do something without you having to physically do it. You sort of pre-program different moves or panning options, volume options. And the cool thing with this automation thing is it can be utilized with nearly anything. Every plugin pretty much has something that you can automate on it. So James Sheet says one of the solutions to latency with the writer plugins is you can write info to the track and then delete the plugin. Very good point. Very good point. So yeah, this particular acoustic guitar track has automation on it. And so we're going to kind of dive into what's going on then with this guitar track. So as you can see, the automation take lane is being used for the psi queue. So essentially, when I create a new automation lane, which I can do here, I'll hit this plus mark. There's a new automation lane. By default, it comes up with a volume automation lane. Okay. So, but with this little drop down menu, I can select the different options on the volume in this instance, or I can also select different sends. And I can also go to the plugins that are enabled within the effects bin. The effects bin is this bin right here where you're going to drop your VST effects. So here's all of the plugins that are on that as well, including the Pro channel. So even if you have no plugins whatsoever, you can still use the Pro channel. And all of these options that are popping up on the right, these are all options that can be automated. Super cool. So in this instance, the psi queue is being automated. You'll notice that the automation lane is gray. And the reason why it's gray is because that coincides with the gray box that's next to bypass. So that's telling me that this automation lane, the gray one, is set to the psi queue, and it's automating that plugin to be bypassed or enabled. Okay. And then right here in the automation lane, you'll see that it says on. That means that as of right now, wherever this transport bar is, it's telling me that the psi queue is actually on at this point in time. So as of right now, it's set to bypass 100%, which should mean if I click on this, oh, I'm going to have to zoom out here. There it is. Okay, so right now, this on denotes that the automation take lane is actually on. It's being utilized. It's doing something. Okay. And what it's doing is it's bypassing this plugin. Okay. So when it gets to this point, however, you're going to notice that the automation tank lane goes all the way to the bottom. With a bypass, you only have one of two options. You have it's either bypassed or it's enabled. So you only have 50-50. So if it's all the way up at 100% here, it's going to be bypassed. If it's all the way down, it's going to be enabled. So you're either bypassed at 100% or you're enabled at 0%. Hope that makes sense. And then each one of these little dots right here, these are called nodes. So you can see like there's a little dot here. There's a little dot here. These nodes, if you're familiar with working with video editing or anything like that, these nodes are sort of similar to what you would see in something like Adobe Premiere Pro or HitFilm or something like that, where you can automate different things within a video with these nodes. It's the exact same thing. These nodes are a point that you can place in that automation lane that will give you control over that point. So for right now, it's sort of like a cutoff point. So for instance, this node right here, everything before that will be affected from that node. Everything after it will be affected by the preceding node. So in other words, if I was to move this, it's not going to move anything before this node here, as you can see. However, everything after that node and before this node will be affected, as well as everything after this node. So if I wanted to insert another node, you can see my pencil has changed, or my cursor has changed to a pencil. And right now I'm on the Smart tool, which is here. And that means that it's going to select things that make sense to the DAW. So right now it's going to be on a pencil, and I can put in nodes. Each one of these nodes will then allow me to change aspects of that, whether it be bypassed or enabled. And you'll notice too that if I was to move my my transport bar here, even though this is at 40%, until it crosses that 50% mark, boom. Now that it's at 51%, now it's going to be in the bypass. You can see this red button just lit up. Now if I go back down again, because it's under 50%, now it's going to be enabled. So you don't necessarily have to go all the way up to the top and bottom. I simply just do that because it's easier for me to see from a distance, like exactly what's going on. Okay. And then you'll notice too that when I hover over a node, the cursor changes into the move cursor. So this allows me to move that node anywhere that I would like for it to be moved by clicking and dragging it. I can also right click on that, and I have several options here. So I'm going to go ahead and delete this node. And as you can see, it's gone. Now there's other ways to use automation, utilizing just your cursor alone. For instance, if I was to select the pencil feature here instead of the smart tool, this would make sure that it stays on the pencil feature, and you can literally just click and drag and draw in automation with your mouse. Now, all of those different nodes that have been created are also alterable by moving them individually, which is pretty cool. So that kind of lets you draw in automation on the fly, and just Control Z will undo all of that. Now, likewise, let's say that I drew in a bunch of stuff, but I don't like a certain section of what I drew in here. By then selecting this delete tool, by clicking on the individual nodes, I can delete things, or even by selecting large amounts, I can delete large amounts of them. So that's just kind of like a brief synopsis of exactly how it can be used and sort of some things that you can do here with your mouse button. The other thing that I would make mention of is, let's talk about, very good point, Keith. He just brought up a good point. Drawing lots of nodes will slow down the PC until you hide that automation lane. And the way that you can hide that automation lane is just by, yet again, clicking this over here. And you'll notice now that automation is still there. It's actually ghosted on top of this clip. And for those of you who have beat your head against a wall and you've got, I know recently I got some clips from a client that had ghosted automation lanes, but yet whenever I opened the automation lane, there was nothing there. If you want to get rid of that, you can just simply go up to, let's see, is it tracks or is it view? Yeah. So if you go up to view here and then display, you'll see this section right here, display ghosted data. If you untick that, it will actually take that off of your screen. So if I was to take that off of there, now you'll see that the waveform itself just looks completely clean again. So for those of you with OCD, me, then that will definitely save you a little bit of nervousness. All right. So now that we've talked about a little bit of kind of how to utilize it with a mouse, let's go a little bit more in depth into some other ways that you could add automation. So let's say, for instance, that I wanted this acoustic guitar track to be very dynamic. If that's the case, James asks, do you mix with a control surface or with a mouse, or a mixture of the two? So it really depends on what I'm automating. If I'm automating vocals, I definitely want to use a fader just because it feels more natural to me. And the way that I do that is I actually use my MIDI keyboard. My MIDI keyboard has several different faders. It's the Oxygen M49. I have that linked in my my kit. If you want to know what I use here in my home studio, I have a kit on kit.co that shows everything that I use, and you can kind of give you a little bit of a brief introduction to what it is that I might be using. That way, if I mention something, you're like, well, what's he talking about? You can kind of go and check it out. And then if you'd like to purchase it too, you can actually purchase it straight off of there. So, but anyway, my Oxygen M49 has sliders on top of it, little faders. And then what I will do is I can actually go up here, which actually, maybe I'll just show you that real quick. That would probably be beneficial. So I'm going to use the volume feature because I'm going to say I want this to be very dynamic. So So Keith says there's a feature to draw shapes like sine waves in the automation lane so you can get away with the mouse pretty much all the time. Yes, that's a very good point. Very good point. But yet again, for me personally, and everyone has different workflows, I like to use a fader when I'm doing um, mainly just vocals. Everything else, to be perfectly honest, I can use a mouse and be just fine with because most of it isn't too crazy. But for those of you who are in the chat and are maybe wondering, what's Keith talking about here? There's actually several different options underneath this. Anything within Cakewalk that has a little triangle in the corner of it like this is going to have a separate menu inside that menu. So it's going to be like a sub menu. I'm trying to figure out how to zoom back out here. Oops. We'll get back on track. There we go. But anything that has that little triangle is going to have a sub menu, and usually by right clicking on that, you're going to see different things will pop up. So on this pencil, if I was to select that and right click on it, you're going to see that there's several different patterns here. This is what Keith is talking about. So with these different patterns, you have, you can either randomize, you can draw like a saw pattern, square pattern, triangle pattern, sine. You can freehand it, which is kind of what I did just a second ago, which I think that's the default is freehand anyway. But like, let's say I was going to do a saw pattern. So now, as you can see, as I begin to draw in automation, I'm drawing in a saw pattern. So if I was to zoom into that, you would see that those are little Z formations there, which is pretty cool. To Keith's point, I mean, that can really save you some time if you're wanting to really. So Jurgen says he don't see the pop-up menus. Really? Okay, well, let me make sure that let's see. Let me float the control bar and then I'll try to bring it up here. I wonder if that's, I wonder if that's not because, let me see. Oops. I wonder if that's not because of the theme that you guys are using. It might be something theme specific. Let me try to change the theme real quick and see if maybe that, because I would like for my screen to see exactly what you guys are seeing so that I could actually, that would definitely be more beneficial. I'm going to go to preferences in here and try to change my theme. This is a custom theme that I have built, so that might be part of it. So I'll go back to the old Mercury theme. We'll see what that, oh man, that brings back memories. Oh, that's a good point. The screen capture may not pick up the pop-ups. Okay, let me do this then. Let me take off window capture and put on display capture. Let's see if that did it. You guys should be able to see that now. Mental note, do not use window capture if you're going to be showing submenus. Okay. Just real quickly in the chat, let me know if you can see that. Okay. All right. Sorry about that, guys. For some reason, the window capture option did not work. It wanted to only capture just a window. Sorry about that. Okay. So, well, now that we know that, I can move this back up here. So what I was saying a minute ago, when it came to the, this here, the submenus that pop up, you should be able to see these now. There's different submenus. And I used the sine wave earlier that was found here. Awesome. Thank you guys so much for pointing that out to me. And then, so the next thing I was going to talk about then was can you change them to backle? Can you change that theme back? Yeah, exactly. The original theme that I remember working with was actually that Mercury theme. And that was like, yeah. So this is, if you guys didn't know about the Cakewalk also has a theme editor. So if you, hey, Bongonzo, what's up? So if you have a theme that you want to create from the ground up, you can do that. And it's really cool. I've actually done that here with this. I love the dark theme, so I left it as the dark theme, but then I've changed just a few things about the project itself and how it shows me things color wise. These lines back here, I put one darker, and then these are a lighter gray. And then up here, as you can see, I've got my website name here. Instead of this looking like a normal now time play slider, it's got, looks like a YouTube play button. If you go to the performance tab, was it? Oh, that's weird. That's supposed to say something that it's not saying. Anyway, normally the performance tab would say subscribe right there. But anyway, I digress. Okay, so the point that I was going to get at now was, let's say that I wanted to use that volume slider on my MIDI keyboard. Then I wanted to use that to actually automate the take lanes. What I can do then is, and let's make sure that my MIDI keyboard is on. Okay, and it is. So then what I can do is go into Act. That's found up here, ACT. And then I'm going to go where it says no control surface. I'm going to select hardware control surface. I'm going to select this little bitty, it's supposed to look like a star. I'm not sure what it is. I'm going to select that, and then I'm going to select an input port for the MIDI oxygen and USB oxygen rather, in and out there, and hit OK. Now that's going to show, here is the color of which, I'm going to make that a little bit brighter. I like purple. If you haven't noticed, I like purple. Okay. So now what that is going to do is that's going to allow me now to be able to affect things. It's a barely visible plus sign. Oh, okay. So what that's going to do is that's going to be able to affect things that are color coded with this purple here in the background. And this can be moved. You can shift this down to other areas. You can, and by doing so, it's going to move all of them down. So because this only has 8 sliders on it, that's why it's only showing up 8 times. So essentially, I know that track 7 now, because it has this little purple area over here, it's being recognized by my controller under this panel. And this tells me exactly what is being selected. So tracks 1 through 8. So now I can go into here, and I can actually set this to be learned. So here's where it gets kind of crazy. So if I want to, I can go to, let's see, the volume right here, right click on that, go to automation, write, enable. Now you'll notice that that turns it red. Okay. So now that that's red, that's write enabled. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to teach it. So I'm going to go to the remote control, and I'm going to set learn. Now, any of my faders, I'm just going to move one of my faders up and down and hit OK. Now you'll notice that this fader is now attached to that volume knob. You see, I'm not doing that at all. That's just my fader that's on my MIDI control board. MIDI control surface. Okay, so Keith is being nuttier than squirrel poop in the comments again. All right, so by being able to do this and having this right enable selected, I can literally, while this is playing back, now on the fly adjust the automation take lane just with this fader. And the way that I can do this is I can hit play. And now I'm just moving that fader while it's playing. This is why I like to use it for vocals, because you can kind of anticipate when someone needs to get a little bit louder or softer. Now, obviously, I'm way overdoing this. So, but you can see here that the automation is all been recorded now. There's a few areas where it looks like it got a little wonky. Now, if this happens, this is actually, I'm glad that this happened, because sometimes it does. If this happens where it looks kind of like a square and it doesn't look like you're wanting it to, usually what you can do is just click on one of these nodes and delete the node. And it should kind of, and it's going to prove me wrong. Okay, so you can either move the node. Was it this one that I was thinking of? There's one of these here that you can actually, it like smooths it out. Let's see. Oh, that was it. Yeah. So because it's set the way that it is, it's wanting to go to jump, which by default, I think that's what it is. But you can go to linear and now it fixes it. Just caught that, Keith. Caught it right before you typed that. Nice. Okay, so. And this is honestly, this is why this stuff can kind of be tricky for newcomers, because there are so many menus and sub menus and little things like this that if you didn't know that that was there, it would probably take you a long time to find. And that's why, this channel exists, to try to help you find those things, so you're not hunting and pecking all around. So now all of these areas where maybe that's happening, I can just simply highlight them and click on the middle portion, not the node, but the middle portion. And then I can set that to linear from here. Or maybe I want it to be a fast curve, or maybe I want it to be a slow curve. So yeah, and then clear all, we'll just bring it right back to where it started from if you want to redo that. As you can see, that's definitely one way that you can use a MIDI control surface to automate your automation. All right, now if I turn that right off, it's no longer going to affect that now. I can still control the volume, but it's not going to write those automation nodes in there. So I'll show you what I mean. Okay, and what you'll notice is it was still set to read, however. So because it's set to read, even if I turn the volume all the way up, the second that I quit moving that fader, it's in read mode. So it's going to read that it needs to go back down to negative 21 dBs. So you got to make sure that if you have something on there that you're not wanting it to read, then you definitely need to make sure that the read mode is off, or just completely delete the take lane. All right. So that's just a real quick sort of lesson on how you can use a MIDI control board for your automation take lanes as well. So next, let's talk about some different ways that you could use automation, because obviously, volume and panning, things like that, those are kind of normal. On this one here, however, you notice that I'm using it to enable and bypass a plugin. and it's done at a specific time in the song. So at a specific time in this song, you'll notice that it's being enabled here. Now, why would I enable that plugin here? Because in context with the rest of the song, when the song first starts, it's very sparsely populated. The only thing that you're hearing is the guitars and some sound effects of like some birds in the background. So I don't really need that EQ to be set up the same way that I need it to be set up whenever all of the instruments come in. So essentially I can just bypass the EQ plugin that I'm using to give it that boost whenever all of the instruments come in. And then whenever the instruments come in, the plugin gets enabled and suddenly the boost is there and it's a seamless integration from one part to another. And then you no longer hear that, it's just very seamless. I'll show you exactly what I mean. And I do realize that those tracks are a little bit low, so I'm going to turn them up. Let me know if this is a little bit better here. Might go ahead and throw a limiter on here just to make it a little bit louder.
I've tried to run when my legs were too weak, and I've tried to fight when there was no fight left in me.
Okay, so during this entire first portion of the song, you'll notice that there is nothing. It's just me and a guitar coming in here. I guess I just gave away the artist. Yeah, this is one of my personal songs that I'm working on. So, well, not really working on, just demonstrating for you guys. This song's already been released a long time ago. It's on Spotify, iTunes, everywhere you can think of. But so during this entire first portion of the section, you'll notice this guitar is going to sound one way. And then very subtly, when these other things come in, this will then get enabled and it will give it, as you can see here, I cut the highs, I'm cutting the mids, and I'm cutting a ton of the low end. So essentially what I'm doing is I'm cutting a bunch of stuff out as soon as all the instruments come in so that it just sort of pulls it to the background. The volume level stays the same, so my initial mix, my rough mix, is pretty much unaffected. But the EQ side of things, yes, the volume does drop a little when you take away from EQ, obviously. But what it does is it carves out a section for the rest of the instruments whenever they come in. They sound more upfront on top, and then that acoustic guitar just kind of folds back into the background where it needs to be. So let's take a real quick listen. And if you're not on headphones, this is probably not going to be heard because this is very, very subtle. But these guitars, both of the acoustic guitars, do the same thing. They come in with this one EQ plot on them, and then that side cue comes on. So check it.
To the mountain peak, there is no place I can go where you will not be. I don't know why I try to take my leave. It's full time. It's full time in my soul. It's full time. It's cyclical. It's full time.
So they're still there. They're just more of a supportive instrument now instead of up front. And most of the time with the songs that I write, at least, a lot of them are very acoustic guitar driven. This one, however, I wanted it to be more of an accentuation to the rest of the mix. So by doing this, actually a good way for you to be able to hear this would be as if I took this into dim solo mode. So if you're not familiar with what dim solo does, essentially a dim solo mode, whenever you solo a track, instead of it just completely hearing your, instead of it being completely soloed to where you hear nothing but that track, dim solo, it solos that track and leaves it at the same volume, but it brings all of the tracks in the mix that aren't soloed down by any number of dBs that you tell it to. The way that I have it set up, if you go into preferences and you go into, I want to say it's under record, maybe. It's been a while since I've actually set it up. So, maybe it's in playback and recording. I'll find it here in a second. There's that. Instruments, control surface. It's not there. It's not there. Well, somewhere on here, by golly, there's a way to set exactly where that's the versioning. Okay. Under audio profile? No. Nope. Where's it at? Somewhere on here. I know it's. I thought it was under that one up there. Anyway, there's a way to set this somewhere in one of these stinking menus where you can set your dim solo, how low you want it to go or how high you would like it for it to go. And maybe I'm not even in the right menu at all, come to think of it. I think maybe I can set it from here. No. Well, I know it's in there somewhere, by golly. Where is it, Keith? he's always like, dude, it's right here. I'm just gonna go straight down the list here until I find it. Oh, there it is. Hello. Driver settings. So it's right here under dim solo gain. Sorry about that, guys. It's one of those things that you set it and you forget it. So as you can see, mine is set to negative 6 dBs. You can set this to negative 12. You can set it lower, higher. But basically what you're wanting to do is, if it's set to negative 12, it's obviously everything below, everything other than the track that you've soloed will be reduced by negative 12 dBs. Negative 6, I think, is pretty good. I think that's a good starting point. So if I have this set to dim solo mode and I'm playing the mix, you still hear the mix in context. So as you can see, even in dim solo mode, he says I had to Google that one. I knew it was in there. It's just one of those things. Like I said, it's a menu option. You set it and you forget it. And, but yeah. So with a dim solo mode, if you're not familiar with that, it's really good for mixing because it allows you to solo a track to where you can still hear more fine-tuned things about the track, but you're also still hearing it in context with the rest of the mix, which if you've listened to any of my tips and tricks on mixing, I'm a very big proponent of not soloing tracks unless you absolutely have to, with the exception of a lead vocal and a bass guitar track. I will solo those from time to time just because sometimes there's things that happen in lead vocals that you got to really pinpoint. And I'm not saying don't ever, solo something to hear what's going on in that track. Usually, especially when I first get a mix, I solo every track just so I can hear if there's anything like in the background that needs removed or something like that. So I'm not saying don't ever I'm just saying don't do a majority of your mixing with a track soloed. However, using this dim solo mode allows you to sort of do that. Okay, so when all of those instruments come in, the big crescendo hits, boom, everything comes in, the acoustic guitars just fall into the back and they support the rest of the song like they're supposed to. Now, another way that you could use this automation in sort of the same sense is let's say that, for instance, these acoustic guitar tracks were right up the center. And I'll do that now. I'll do that live. So I'm going to create a new automation lane here. I'm going to use this drop-down menu to select pan. And as you can see, it's panned all the way to the left. I'm going to bring that to center. So in this instance would be 0% or close to it. I'm not going to try to. Okay, so let's say that these two tracks here, the acoustic guitars, were both right at the center when the song first starts. Okay. And then maybe for the chorus, what am I doing? And then maybe for the chorus, I want these to both be panned out to the left and to the right to add some movement, to add some difference, to add, just some sonic coolness. That's even a word. I can simply just create a couple of nodes in those areas where I'd like for that to be created. Come back here. Let's say I want this one to go all the way to the left. And I want this one to go, if it'll open, all the way to the right. Okay. So now, if I was to play these back, and I'm going to take the dim solo off here real quick. So now they're at the center, and then boom, they both pan out to the right and left of the stereo field. Another cool use for automation. That's a great way to also create movement within a track, such as, I know Mark is really big into synths. That's a great way to create movement within a synth track, is to automate that pan lane, and then literally just take that tool that we just used a minute ago and just start drawing in stuff like this. Tone Mangler says, do you ever use clip gain automation instead of volume automation? Very, very rarely. And the reason for that is I try not to touch my gain very much at all. Now, in this instance, you'll see that every once in a while I'll kind of nudge the gain, but I try not to touch that gain at all. And the reason for that is if the gain is set to 0, I'm going to be hearing a better representation of what the audio is doing into those plugins. Because just like a pedal board, just like analog gear, if you turn your gain up, because this is first before the effects bin, which means it's going to be first in the signal chain. If I was to turn the gain up, then that would then increase the volume going into the plugins. So sometimes that's desirable, and that's why there are times when I do use it. Like, say, for instance, if I'm going into a saturation plugin, I could turn the gain up just a little to get it to break up a little more. But generally speaking, I don't automate the gain at all. I usually just automate the volume because I want to try to keep that gain at 0 so that I'm getting a good representation of what those plugins are doing across the board. And another thing for that is because a lot of times if you have volume automation and you have gain automation, it can get kind of tricky as to which one do I turn up, which one do I turn down. And I've got tracks before where people have the gain turned all the way up to like plus 20 and the volume knob or volume fader is like really, really far down here. And I'm like, you actually shoot yourself in the foot by doing that, because these faders, they have this region right here. You'll see from +6 to infinity, not infinity. I forget what the name, that's unity. Sorry. +6 to unity to -6. You'll see that the dots that are on these faders are a lot wider. And then as you get farther down here, you'll notice that they're a lot closer together. And that means that if you keep your faders in this area here, you're going to have a more fine tooth approach of being able to automate or turn volumes up or down. When you get below the -6 region here and that starts dropping, when you get below -6 dBs on the fader, then you can make just small amounts of movements and you hear huge volume differences. So by being able to kind of keep it hovered around this unity right here, you're going to have a lot more fine-tuned control, if that makes sense. All right. Mark George says, I'm sorry, audio sound engineering. I'm gonna get back to yours. I work with Studio One and Cakewalk by BandLab, and I'm so surprised with Cakewalk. Even I am an old user since many years ago. Yeah, definitely. And they just keep getting better. That's the crazy thing. So Mark says, I tried it on an ARP, worked okay, so I saved it. When I came back and opened it up, I went to the volume fading and I can't get it to stop, even though I have deleted the animation track. Gotcha. A lot of times, there's some hiccups there. So what you want to do is, first and foremost, you want to go to your, let me zoom out of this again. So let's just say theoretically that was happening on this track. There's a couple of different ways that you can do this. I've never personally had this happen to me, so I'm not saying that it's all, you know, I'm not saying it's all you. I'm not saying it's not. But so a couple of things that you can do is you can take the read and write animation off, and then it should not listen to that. But if you still want to add automation and you want it to be able to read automation, what you can always do is then just duplicate the track and just move or not move, but duplicate the track and then copy or duplicate the waveform. And I've showed you how to do that on other tutorials. You can either hit, which the best way to do that would be to, with your smart tool selected, would be to hit, hold Control and Shift, and then just drag it down to a track below it. That's going to keep it perfectly in time, and it'll copy that to that next track down there. So, okay, so now that we've talked about using it for panning, and I kind of showed you exactly how to use that for panning, I'm going to go ahead and delete that. Let me know if that works, by the way, Mark, and if it don't, maybe we need to do a little bit more of a deeper dive and figure out what's going on there, because if you have taken it off, it shouldn't be doing that at all. I just realized my fan turned off. Hold on a second. There we go. It gets very hot in this room. It's acoustically treated, so nothing enters it or escapes it without wanting to. So right now, all the heat is trapped in here. Awesome. Thanks, Mark. Tone Manglers, thank you so much. Mark Bergstaller says, humor me for a second. Take a track, maybe one of the acoustics, and create an automation lane which fades a track in from 0. Please do it from scratch from the very beginning. Okay, cool. So we'll just do exactly what he's asked here. And the way that I'll do that is I'll insert an audio track. It'll just be a random. That way I'm not copying anything. So it'll be sort of close to a representation of what we're doing here. And then I'll use this acoustic guitar track because it currently has no automation on it whatsoever anyway. I think that was my DI source. I didn't have to automate it. And then I'm going to Control Shift and then move it down to this track here, which means it's going to be perfectly in time. Not that it really matters right now. All right, I'll solo that. Now, if I wanted to have this, let's butt it up against the end here. Now, if I wanted to have this, I'm going to make that a little bit bigger. Okay. So if I wanted to have this fade in from 0 and then come in at a desired, let's say, up to 0, then what I would do is I would click on, let me get my mug out of the way here. Hold on. There we go. So what I would do is I would click on the automation lanes on and off. The first thing that's going to come up is the volume. Then I would select a point at which I would say, okay, I want it to come in at full volume here. Okay. Go back to this automation take lane here. And right there is the very first node. It's kind of hidden there. But that essentially would cause that to fade in from 0 and up. Now, if I play that back, and of course that's going to happen because I've got something else soloed here. Where's it at? I hear you up here. There you are. Okay, so essentially this would fade in from 0. Yeah, that was definitely my DI track. That sounds like junk. Ugh, I can't stand DIs by themselves, but when you add them and accentuate them in with other things, they're awesome. So then what I might do is I might create another node right down here, and then I would select this node. Actually, I would select the middle portion of this, and I would go to a slow curve, and then I would just bring this down. So that's how I do that for like a slow intro there. Very slow. Okay. Or you can, obviously you can do fast curve. So there would be a fast curve. So it's going to be the exact opposite. It's going to come in a lot faster. Okay. But yeah, that's essentially how I would do that. Nothing too crazy about that. Yes. Yes, you can do this as well with your MIDI keyboard versus with a mouse. Exactly. And the way that I would do that, just to go ahead and dive right in there and show you that, because that's what this whole thing is all about. So if I was to, okay, so I'll go up here, I'll select this, I'll go to write enable. Now that has turned red, so that lets me know that it is working. And now I'm going to use my MIDI keyboard. So I'm going to go to remote control. I'm going to select learn. And now any of the faders that I have connected to this keyboard, or even knobs, you can use volume knobs too as well. So now I'm going to move it around a couple times and then hit OK. And now that's been mapped. So let's say I wanted to fade this in from 0. I would bring in my fader all the way down. I wish I had 2 cameras so I could show you this. And then I would just simply hit play and slowly begin to fade that up. Okay. But as you'll see, whoa, what's it doing? Well, that's because it's still on read. So when you're creating this first initial, if you were going to do like a fade in like that, you want to take that read off, because what it's going to do is as soon as I quit moving this fader, it's going to tell it that it needs to read it at the original, which was negative infinity. So let's try that again. There we go. Now it should stay right where it's supposed to. Okay. And it looks like it's still dropped down after that fact. That's weird. I can just simply delete these nodes though, and it should, oops. There we go. All right. I hope that answered your question, Mark. The other thing that I was going to make mention of, which I'm glad that you had me do this, there is automatically by default, there is a beginning node and an end node. That's very helpful to know, because you'll see that this slowly starts to decline as it goes down here. And the reason for that is because this, by default, this end node that's down here was set to negative infinity still. So it's going to think that it needs to go all the way back down to that point throughout the entirety of the song. Keith. Oh, man. So what you can do is select this last node and double click it, and that'll bring it up to the 0 point again. And same thing here. So what I would suggest then, if you're getting the same results as I'm getting, is start out on 0, like I've just done here. Let me redo this. We'll input volume. Okay, it's started out on 0. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to the end of the song and input a node that will hold it to that position. Or better yet, that's not going to work. Better yet, what we'll do is we'll go to the beginning of the song, and the portion where we feel like it needs to come up to 0, like let's say right here, that's where we're going to set the first initial node. And maybe we'll just put one back here for giggles. Okay, now I'll go back to my fader, turn it all the way down to 0, and try this again. Okay, that definitely worked. So everything before that, still was a little bit out of whack, but as you can see, that definitely worked as far as the rest of that was concerned. Basically, what's happening is if there's not a node there to hold its place, it's automatically going to go to the default position wherever it thinks that it needs to go. So if that default position was negative infinity, then that's where it's going to tell that to go. So now in order for that to work, now that I've got that wrote in there, I've got to have it set to read enable. I can turn write enable off. And there we go. Okay, so super simple stuff here. Nothing like too crazy. I hope that helped. He says, perfect, thank you. Awesome. Glad that I could provide some value there. All right, so what's some other ways, creative ways that we could use automation? And this is where it gets kind of cool because, excuse me, because automation does not just have to be utilized on painting options. It doesn't have to, Mark, you're fine, man. Don't worry about it. By doing that, it's helping everybody to learn, and it's helping me to be able to find this stuff too. So don't worry about it, man. That's what we're here for. Questions, keep them coming. Absolutely. There's no stupid question. Why is the automation lane sometimes dotted? Okay, that's a good point to bring up. So the dotted automation lane means that that portion of the automation does not have a node attached to it, which means that if there is a moment in there where it's supposed to be reading, it's sort of like a default automation. But essentially it means that there is no, sorry, I was trying to read the comments. Essentially it means that there is no, there's nothing there for it to read. So it will still read that dotted green line, but excuse me, it'll still read the dotted green line, but essentially what it's showing you is that within that section where that dotted green line is, there are no major automation changes taking place. So it's just defaulting to whatever it is. That's kind of a cheesy answer, I know. But I really, not really sure exactly how to follow up with that one. And it also works using the mouse on the mix fader. Yes. Yes. So if you don't have a MIDI keyboard, you can still do the same things that we were just doing right here with a mouse. And actually, I might just show you that real quick. Just to kind of illustrate the point, I'll create an automation lane here. And then only using my mouse. And you can see that it's only a mouse because I don't have anything mapped to this. So the way that I would do that is, let's say I want to have this shaker fade in or get louder. I would set this here to write enable. And then I would simply hit play. Let me solo this. Play. Now I'm going to click on the volume section here itself and drag that where I'd like for it to be with my mouse. Okay. And because it's on read, as you can see, it's going back to the initial wherever it lands. So on this one here, it stopped right here. And as you can see, again, those dotted lines, that means that there are no other automation nodes after that point. It's just default. So now if I put an automation node there, boom, now you have a solid line. Cool. All right. Great questions, guys. Keep them coming. He says, I do this a lot as it's a quick way to create an automation lane for a plugin. Oh, automate a reverb bypass to reset the tail end. That's cool. Yeah, that's definitely, he's brought up a good point here. That's definitely a cool way to utilize the automation is for reverbs. So for instance, on, let's use this lead vocal. This is going to get scary because it's going to be stripped down to nothingness. It's just going to be my lead vocal, which kind of makes you feel like you're in one of those dreams where you're naked walking through a school. Oh, I know. You guys never have those dreams, do you? All right. At any rate, we'll use these and I'll automate maybe this medium plate. We'll use this one as an example. So I'll right click on the medium plate, go to write enable, go back here. We'll play just this raw vocal.
Try to run when my legs were too weak, and I've tried to fight when there was no fight left in me. I've tried to hide, but you know I know, good at hide and seek, 'cause I give myself away every time I hear you speak, though I can.
Okay, so obviously I'm way overdoing this, but what you can see here is all I'm simply doing with this is I'm just automating the reverb send. How much of that dry signal am I sending to that reverb level? And so it's literally just another volume automation, but this is another way that you can do that. So you need a bypass on the delay or reverb VST3 normally have it. Oh, I see what you're saying. So you're saying like, okay, gotcha. Yeah, I honestly don't think I've ever done that. Now that I understand exactly what you're talking about, I don't think I've ever done that. Interesting. Okay, so I'm gonna take that back off there. Another cool thing is that this can be done too with buses. So if you have a bus, like say for instance, the parallel compression on my drums, I can set that to be stronger at certain points or, to come in right where it's at. So if I was to bring this up, it works the same way on a bus that it would on a track. So okay. So as you can see, I'm on a bus. Hey, take care, Mark. Appreciate you hopping on, man. And I really appreciate the super chat. Super cool of you. Hopefully you learned something here today. I'm kind of going through it willy nilly and just taking questions as I go. So, I hope someone's learning something from all of this. Okay. So as you can see though, I'm actually on the bus pane. So I just did that on a bus. So it doesn't have to just be only on the tracks. That's really cool to know too, because a lot of times what I'll do on my master, on my mix bus, is I will do at the very end of the mix, I do volume automation where I just make it come up like 1 to 2 dBs and down 1 to 2 dBs, like all over the place. Sometimes I'll even randomize it just to create a little bit of extra energy. Um, those little bit of changes in the volume, a lot of times will sort of draw people into the song. It makes it sound a little more dynamic. Um, so yeah, awesome. See, Keith, this is what it's all about. We are learning stuff from one another. You've already got me some ideas now on this whole reverb automation thing. Along the same lines, oh, I've got my drums bus soloed. I was like, why am I not hearing that vocal? There we go. I can take that off.
I've tried to run when my legs were too weak. I've tried to fight when there was no.
Okay, so another cool thing you can use this automation for is for delays. Now, obviously, this is kind of like a no-brainer, but if you've never used delay automation, it's super cool. So best case scenario is you use a delay and you use the reverb and delay calculator on my website to get it to harmonize pretty well with the vocal, to get it to set right. Now, if you don't want that to happen, if you want it to have like a long trailing effect, that's where automation can come in. So you can actually set a delay automation to where, I think I actually have a delay bus here, but I'm not sure if there's even a delay on it. Yeah, there is. So as of right now, this is what the delay sounds like. Hey, see you later, audio sound engineering. Okay, so as of right now, that's what the delay sounds like in and of itself, by itself. Okay, but if I wanted to, I could either automate the pan to make it go from left to right. I could automate the level at the end of my sentences or at the end of my lyrics. So essentially you could get that trailing effect that used. Yes. Yes. Any effect can be automated. I should say most any effect. There are some plugins, like third-party plugins, that for some reason or another, you go to try to automate something on them and they don't have an option for you to automate whatever it is you would like to. But yeah, if I was to go to an automation lane here, you'll notice that I have the VX64 vocal strip. I'm having it automated with the doubler. So the doubler in the VX64 vocal strip does not come on as of right now. It should be bypassed.
I've tried to run.
Yeah, it's bypassed. On the choruses, however, it comes in. So on the chorus, I have a doubler enabled. You'll see that right here. So if I was to solo this vocal, let's hear that in context with just the vocal itself.
I leave, it's full time. It's full time in my soul, it's full time. It's cyclical, it's full time. It's seasonal, it's fall.
Yeah, I don't, to that point, Mark, I don't know if you can change. I don't know if you can change a preset, can you? Because it lists all of the options that you can change right here, but I don't think that I've ever seen, unless it's, what does reserved mean? I don't even know what that means. Weird. Okay. I'm like undoing things that I'm not sure what I'm undoing. Yeah, I'm not sure what that whole reserved thing was. That was weird. But anyway, you can also set it up for your side chains. Reserved means it's British. Oh. Okay, so Tone Mangler. Oh, Jurgen, see you later, buddy. It was good having you. Have a great rest of the night, great rest of the day. Um, don't know if you work third shift or what, but have a good one, man. After writing automation on a track and then realize the whole track needs to be louder, how would you do that? Okay. So there's a couple of different ways. For one, you could either use that gain feature, which yet again, you want to be careful using the gain. Oh yeah. Thanks, Keith. Appreciate that. Yesterday was National Tea Disposal Day. Um, had a cookout, got to go fishing this morning with my son. I finally outfished him. But yeah. So, where was I at? Oh yeah, okay, sorry. Shiny objects. So yeah, if you want to, you can either use the gain and turn it up from there. But like I said, that's going to minimize your control on what's being funneled into the plugins. So another good way to do that would actually just be to select the clip, go up to process, apply effect, and you can actually turn your gain up here. So that's actually affecting the clip's gain. It's not going to affect the gain that's within the signal flow. You can normalize it, which I wouldn't recommend that unless it's like spoken word or something like that. You're wanting to normalize it. But yeah, just go up here to the gain option, and then they actually have different options you can use here. Yes, that would actually, it would depend on where, I should say, it would depend on where your compression is in the signal chain. If you're using outboard gear, obviously it's not going to affect the compression because that's before the clip gain. But inside your DAW, yes, it would more than likely, it would affect any compression that's being used. So it's good idea to note that, by the way. So yeah, man, I really don't know what else to. I was trying to think of something that was kind of like more. I don't know, experimental or. So we went kind of like beginner level, intermediate level. I wanted something that's more kind of like pro level. And I guess with the pro level, I guess the thing that I would say is just be as creative as possible with your automation. You'll notice that on the lead vocals here, I had a doubler that was enabled only on the chorus. That makes the chorus sound different than the verses. When it comes to guitars, you can use painting options. When it comes to a uh, another option might be for the lead vocal. Automate a drum pattern with the ARP. Dare you? Oh my goodness. I mean, what's the worst that could happen, right? But yeah, just go all around and try to think creatively, like how could I, because what it does is it expands and opens up a whole new world of possibilities with your plugins, because now they can be tweaked without you touching them. And essentially you can automate the entire mix to do things that normally you would have to have, 75 interns doing if you were using outboard gear. So there's just so many things you can do with that. Another cool thing that you can use that for is for challenge Rob time. what I do is just put a Sonatus EQ as the last effects in the bin and use that to gain up. That'll work too. Yeah. Yeah, because that way then you would have more control over the gain later on in the mix. You're not actually affecting the whole waveform and then having to go back and turn it down later. I see what you're saying. So yeah, that's one way to do it. Now I know within Cakewalk too, there's also a, there should be, where's that at? Channel multi-effects, is that where it's at? Oh, spatial. Channel tools, that's it. Okay. That's what happens when you update to a new computer. It's having trouble finding the bitmap. So I'm going to have to find out where the bitmap needs to be. Awesome. Anyway, the channel tools plugin is essentially, why is it doing that? Quit it. The channel tools bitmap is essentially, can be used in the same way to create volume. And it can also be used for panning at the same time. And I have now figured out that I need to fix that. Okay, so, you know what's crazy is we're like almost 2 hours into this. An hour and 45 minutes. Wow. All right, so I hope that I've covered as much as I possibly could. I mean, there's not too terribly much more that I could cover. If you want to go more in depth to the controls and some aspects like that, I do have a video on within the Cakewalk by BandLab tutorial playlist here that just deals with automation as well. It's sort of a condensed version, but I thought it would be kind of cool just to take questions as I go to. So if you want to go and check that out, you're more than welcome to do that. So, all right. I think that's going to go ahead and just about clear it up, unless anybody has any more questions. By the way, just recently Warren Hewitt just recently reached out to me after the fact, and I can't say anything yet, but there's some cool stuff that's going to be happening in the very near future for this channel and Produce Like a Pro. So awesome. Now let's see. I guess I'm going to go ahead and just end it out with this song. So until next time, love you all. Thanks for stopping by. And if you have any questions in between then about automation, as usual, feel free to hit me up. You all know how to get a hold of me. So, yeah, we're going to go ahead and end it out with this song. If you want to step back and listen, you're more than welcome to. You got somewhere to be. See you later. It's been nice having you all.
I've tried to run when my legs were too weak, and I've tried to fight when there was no fight left in me. I've tried to hide, but I know good at hide and seek, 'cause I give myself away every time I hear you speak. Though I cast myself into the depths of the sea, or sprout wings and fly to the mountain peak, there is no place I can go where you will not be. I don't know why I try to take my leave. old branches are bare. The sun is sinking faster, it's darkness everywhere. The nights they grow colder, I lean my legs